Hello, and welcome to Coffee with Kathleen. We are winding down the year, aren't we? It is just disappearing so fast. I don't know what to do about that. Nothing, I suppose. And here I am with my let's see, get this logo in the frame here. This is my Growl Yeti. So we have worked with Growl on and off over the years. They're a marketing assistance firm, and we have worked with them on a variety of different things, and they have a specialty in the automotive sector. So maybe you too will get a mug and lots of precious and wonderful advice if you work with them. They did not pay me to say this, but I am using their cup today, so I figured I'd start off with that. I always like to promote my friends when I can. But that is not what we're necessarily here to talk about today. So many of you know that I recently took a vacation. And I don't know, I feel like people used to make fun of having to go to people's houses and watch slideshows about their vacation or hear endlessly about someone's vacation. But I find that when I do the modern version of that, which is posting about my vacations and adventures and whatnot and telling stories on social media and sharing photos, that people respond positively. And then they're like, hey, share even more photos. Tell me even more about that, etc. So this is going to be a podcast a little bit about my recent vacation, which was to Peru. And I did a couple of different hikes, day hikes out and back. And then I did a 4-day hike on the Incan Trail from Cusco to Machu Picchu. And because it is impossible, literally impossible for me to do any of this kind of stuff without actually having like spiritual and inspirational, philosophical revelations, I did not come back empty-hearted or empty-minded from this trip either. Because just like, as you know, I'm studying to be a mindfulness meditation teacher. And just like people misunderstand meditation, I think they misunderstand vacations too. The idea of vacation is not to go and have nothing in your mind. The idea in vacation, at least for me, is to go and experience something that is outside of the normal day to day, and to get outside of your bubble, and to get outside of the people that you're normally around and the opinions that you're normally soaking yourselves in and all of that kind of stuff, and expose yourself to something totally different. And then therefore, things might come at you in a different way. I do like to relax, but I can relax in my day-to-day life as well. And so I think to me, that's the essence of what vacation is about. And so certainly, when I was hiking the Incan Trail, there were a lot of things that occurred to me. And, hey, I thought I would share a few of those with you. So let's have another sip here and then let's get into it. So the Incan people spoke a language which is still spoken in Peru today called Quechua. And so I'm going to do some little sayings for you that I learned while I was on the trail. And I'm going to translate those obviously into English because I don't speak Quechua and I probably butcher the pronunciation. And so they might be slightly different in the native language, but nonetheless, they're things that maybe you've even heard before or similar things that have made their way into our popular lexicon. So first one is, little by little, one walks far. Okay, so that was certainly true of the day-to-day life long ago when that was a primary mode of transportation, was our own little legs. And it is certainly true on the Incan Trail. So there's really something about physically approaching challenges and living them physically that allows you to learn these kind of concepts in a new and deeper way. So I was really, really inspired by the Incan approach to difficulty when I was on this vacation. They not only seemed to accept that life was going to be hard, they really leaned into the fact that life is hard. They made many of their religious and secular sites, which for them, most sites are an amalgam of those two things. There was not a big difference between spiritual life and day-to-day life. They were really intertwined. But they made these sites really hard to reach. They used huge boulders in their construction. So everybody who's at least even a little familiar with Machu Picchu and some of the other sites knows about these amazing rock formations, which some people say were built by aliens or I don't know what, because they're so perfectly fitted together, these gigantic stones. I personally, by the way, side note, I do not believe that these Incan sites were built or assisted by aliens. I believe that there is wisdom that our ancestors and that the Incan ancestors had, and knowledge that they had that we don't need or want to utilize anymore, and that has been lost, and that they were capable of doing things that we're not currently capable of doing, because we don't live the same way, because we don't have the same understanding, and that those things resulted in some very beautiful and awe-inspiring things, which are currently lost to modern life, which is part of the beautiful ability to step into the past that you can do at these and other sites, that reflect human accomplishment. Um, Having said that, of course, it was difficult for them, I'm sure of it. And they didn't do things the easy way. Having said that, they did ease into it bit by bit and do things one step at a time rather than rushing. So to that end, they also said the mountains are not conquered in a single day. And I like that because it really reflects the idea of gradual progress, patience, persistence, things that I am often talking to my team about. They'll tell you that. I'm like, let's live by the P's, right? The polite persistence, the patience, the progress, are really things that I emphasize. But it speaks to the challenges of life and it likens them to climbing mountains. And that's something that you can try to go a little faster, but really ultimately you can't rush it. The trip is the length that it is, and you'll get there kind of one step at a time. So, I think these are common concepts in modern life. This ethos is in us. We're really often more excited, more gratified by something that was achieved via hard work over time than we are about overnight success. And we talk a lot about hard work. We really hold it not only as a piece of advice that we offer to people, but we actually hold that as being something of a moral quality. Somebody that's a hard worker, we think of that as a positive moral quality. We have this idea that we want to know that someone has paid their dues, right? We don't really love the idea of overnight successes. But why do we want that? So on the one hand, is it a kind of jealousy or sort of schadenfreude that keeps us mired in the concept that people should struggle a bit, where we don't want things to happen all at once for other people because we're not there yet. And we don't want the idea that they got there quickly or it was easy for them in some way because our life is difficult and we want to see other people having the same difficulties that we have. And certainly I do think there's an element of that in there. But I also think that if we really sit in that, there's something much, much deeper and more wise that is contained in this. And I think it is a human universality as well. So even though as modern folks, we're seeking ease, we're seeking for things to happen quickly, I think it applies to our careers. It applies to things that are important to us, where we're rushing and working so hard and really pushing to try to get to the end. But we need to also accept that things take the time that they take, and that actually, even when something appears like maybe it's overnight successful for some folks, or that some folks have it easier than other folks, the fact of the matter is that difficulty is inherent in the human experience. So the Incas have another saying that helps with this, which I also like. And it is, do not rush to the top of the mountain, for the path is where life is lived. And of course, the Incans literally built a path, many paths, actually, not just one. We call it the Incan Trail, which is sort of a misnomer because actually there's trails everywhere. And some of them have been lost. The jungle has taken them over, as the jungle does, or the mountains have worn them away, as they do. And so they're obscured and no longer used. There are multiple trails going multiple different directions. But these pathways, that's where the life is lived. So that's, and there's a lot about this. This is not new. Nothing I'm saying today is new. Okay, that's okay, because I do think you still need to hear this, and I think repetition's the key to learning, right? So I think it's the importance of the journey itself, not just the destination. And we hear that a lot. Um, but when you take the time to do something and really soak in it the way that I did on the trail, you figure that out. And actually, there were some points along the destination that were really much more meaningful to me personally than actually arriving at Machu Picchu as at the end. And the Incas certainly believed that the experience of struggles and lessons learned along the way were just as important as reaching the goal. And they were very much, and this appeals to me so hard, you guys, they were very much a learning culture. So in addition to being conquerors, they also sought to absorb what each group of people that they were sort of, conquering or bringing into their empire knew. And that was about the land or agriculture or skills, insights, also religious and spiritual practices, everything. And in this way, with each new conquest, they not only had, a larger kingdom with more people in it and all of that, but they also were incorporating new learning. And conquering as a word and as a metaphor is a little bit difficult for me because it has an element of violence in it, doesn't it? Like underlying that is the idea that you have to subdue something in order to conquer it. But what I mostly mean about that is just the idea that every stage, every difficult step has something to learn seems so important. And that ultimately, if you've got, a challenge in your path and you've made it from one side to the other of that challenge, or you're on the top of it, there is an element of conquering that, just overcoming that in your life or working with it in your life. So I'm sure there's other words you can use if you don't like that one, or if it hits you the way it does with me, but that's the idea. And that every step along this way not only is to be enjoyed, but is also something that you can learn from. So the Incans also said, the earth is mother, the mountain is father. And that really highlighted the spiritual connection that the Incas felt to nature. So they call Mother Earth Pachamama, which I think is just such a warm word. I really love it. And the Apis, which were the mountain spirits, and those are central in Incan spirituality. So mountains symbolize protection, strength, the endurance that you really need for this journey of life. And yes, it is an endurance journey. It's sometimes a strength journey. It's sometimes a speed journey. It's sometimes a slow journey. But ultimately, it requires endurance. So I'm mostly kind of what I would consider to be a secular person. And this is a secular podcast. So I'm going to talk about sacred now, but I want you to think about how the things you define as sacred appear in your life, whether that's religious practice or whether it's your family or your children, your friends, even maybe, time alone or time with people or whatever. Think about how you're defined by the things you hold sacred. And ultimately, we spend so much time at work. I'd argue to you that anything that you invest that amount of time in, which is your limited resource, is somewhat sacred to you for some reason, right? So we've got this circle of things that we've defined as sacred because they're intrinsic to who we are. We're willing to spend lots of time and resource on them. In fact, we feel we must, we have to, we want to. And then let's challenge those boundaries a bit. So is there a way to take that group of things, that what I'm going to call a sacred circle, okay, that includes a certain set of things in your life? Understand what's in your sacred circle, first of all, right? Like knowing is the first key. And then secondly, think about, can you expand the boundaries of your sacred circle to include other practices, things that perhaps really serve you, things that you make sure you never forsake, that always are a part of your life or a part of things that you do, things that you're going to spend time on, things that you're going to prioritize. And can you make sure that you are in your sacred circle? I talk a lot about this, I know, but self-care is so important. And these practices that really nourish you should be in this circle. So now we're learning about leaning into difficulty. It's necessary part of the process. It is an inherent part of the process, whether we like it or not. We're now moving along the path at just the right speed for us, which is sometimes going to be pretty slow. We're enjoying the journey. We're expanding what we hold as mandatory and sacred. Hey, you're on the Incan Trail with me. Okay, but let's keep going. We're not to the sacred lost city yet. Here's another saying. One who climbs mountains must not fear heights. So courage and resilience are really key in facing life's difficulties. So, it's sort of much like scaling a tall mountain. It requires not only strength, but also overcoming fear. So what fears are holding you back? Are you afraid of the heights on the trail? Are you afraid of things that you're telling yourself? Are you afraid you're going to fail? Are you afraid you're not going to make it? Are these realistic fears? Sometimes, fear is just information. It tells us a little bit about something. Or are they artificial? Are they barriers that you're putting in your own path that don't actually exist? So remember, the path is already rocks. It's already steps that, trust me, are 12 to 14 inches high. There is a wall right before you get to the sun gate, which overlooks, Machu Picchu in this really beautiful way. And there's a mostly flat path from the sun gate to Machu Picchu, actually. So once you get to the sun gate, you've kind of gotten there. There's a wall where I had to use my hands and feet to climb it. It's still stairs, but they are so thin and so narrow and so steep. The locals now in Spanish language call it the gringo killer because it is a killer wall, right? And so you are already going to have climbs like that in your life. You're going to have times where you don't know if you can make it, where you're breathing so hard, where you're expending all of your resource and energy just trying to make it. Where maybe you're going to fall down and skin your knee or something like that. It didn't happen to me, but it certainly happened to people on the trail. And when you fall down on rocks like that, boy, ooh, wow. It was a brutal view, right? Brutal for those folks. They were bleeding and really hurt. Someone's broken their leg there before. I'm sure there's been other injuries I didn't hear tales on the trail about. So if your path is already tough, why are we making it more hard than it needs to be by placing false or imagined rocks also in the path? And, for example, like one of those false or imagined rocks, might be just our innate resistance to things we know are good for us. We crave complication. So, for example, we all know how important it is to drink the right amount of water. I certainly do. But I've spent years running around dehydrated, like I was living in an arid desert with no cup. So now, in order to get the right amount of water, I play all kinds of little tricks on myself. I put herbal and aromatic drop-ins. I have a water bottle printed with encouragement on it. I also have, these cute designed little bottles that look so pretty and make me want to drink out of them and all of that, right? And obviously, this is a podcast about coffee. It's not a podcast about water, but still, water is good for us, right? But meantime, if I'm parched on the Incan Trail or in the desert, all I would be able to think about is my next sip of water. That's all that would matter to me at that moment, right? And I would be complaining to all my friends on Sandbook about how there isn't enough water. I certainly drank plenty of it on the Inca Trail because it was absolutely necessary to me continuing my journey. But, when I'm sitting here at my desk, it gets easy to neglect. So how are we creating habits that are so big and beautiful and vibrant and important and nourishing and supporting that they crowd out bad habits? And how are we then making our path just a little bit easier in the process? So for you, you're here, you're listening to this podcast, because you're supporting me and you love me, maybe, or maybe one of your friends loves me and invited you or something. And just know that I love you too. And I'm so thankful for you and your presence. These are all really good reasons to be here, by the way. So showing support for each other, as professionals and some of us as women and, as different identities that we have as queers or as other people, is super, super important that we do that. But I would also argue it's not really why you're here. You're here because you're in a desert or you're climbing a high mountaintop and you were a little bit thirsty, not in the colloquial way, but literally your spirit, right? Or maybe you're a little hungry or you're starved, you're craving something. And that something might be peace or joy or just a little bit of ease, a release from suffering. Just because we're leaning into difficulty doesn't mean we have to suffer through difficulty. And deep down, no matter how recursive some of your thoughts are or what artificial difficulties you're creating for yourself, some of which might be about your own personal self-image, you deserve this too. You do. And mixed in with all of those artificial difficulties that we create are, truths, insight, wisdom, flat rocks on our path. So let's not, guard these artificial rocks like real ones. Let's not put them in a treasure trove and sit over them like a dragon. Let's open ourselves up. Let's admit what they are. And then let's toss them out like the garbage that they are, the most useless detrimental rocks. Let's just throw them off the edge, down the mountain, right? They don't need to be in the path anymore. And certainly those things that we might discover in the path that are tough, let's not throw them at others either. Let's just drop them off the edge. The trail's already hard. That's okay. And we can remember that, peace is available to us on the trail if we sit or stand or move intentionally and quietly, and we open our eyes and our heart to be more aware and in this present moment. And then we create peace. In the midst of difficulty, we create peace. And that translates into everything we do. So perhaps you should take a moment on your own trail right now, whether you're on an uphill or whether you're on a downhill or just, oh my gosh, this was so cherished because actually the downhills were way harder for me than the uphills on the trail, because of how slippery and narrow the stones are. And uphill I could get through with my effort and my physical conditioning and my training. But man, the downhills were tough. So a bit of blessed flat road is amazing. And so whether your view is beautiful or shrouded by clouds and fog, or whether you're in the midst of a miserable downpour that's making your path so slippery, just take a pause to reflect where you're really at and what this might mean for you. And perhaps just to make this trail a little easier, let's take something small and new with us, something that doesn't weigh too much in our day pack to help offset our difficulties, like the mindful moment that I just described. Just pay attention to your breath in and out. Be aware of your surroundings for 60 seconds. Or maybe we pack along a gratitude practice and we just list off a few things that we're grateful for each day at this, roughly the same time each day, so we can make a little bit of a habit of it. Or maybe we can create a bite-sized journaling exercise where we jot down just a few words each day about what stands out to you about the day. And again, a way of bringing awareness into your day so that you have a couple of highlights that you can list at the end of the day. Those days we get to the end and we don't remember where we've been. We don't even know what trail we were on. We didn't notice anything beautiful off to the side or in the distance or right in front of us, because we were just, mindlessly running through the day. So we just want to bring a little bit more awareness, because on this trail, beauty is absolutely everywhere. Even on the most difficult parts of the trail. And we want to be able to put those things in our pockets or in our day pack for later, because that is what being on the journey is all about. So I hope you've had fun with me here today, as we have hiked a little bit mentally. And I certainly have had fun with you. And thank you for attending.